Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Marianne Vanderdusen. I'm an artist and teacher, and I'm committed to helping you find empowerment through art. This is the tutorial for my oil painting, the Ruby Parrot Tulips. This is the 5th of 12 paintings featured in my square foot show, and the second in the Florals collection centered around the theme of radiance. This is my first year creating content for YouTube, so I would love if you would take the time to like, subscribe, and comment to help me to continue to build this channel. Let's get started. Just like with the other companion piece in this series, I start by using a layer of burnt umber in the background to help me to begin to see the darkest values of the painting. I do this in acrylic paint because it dries so quickly and because I can easily water it down to ensure I'm getting into all the cracks and crevices of the petals. Once it was dry, I used my usual combination of burnt umber and ultramarine blue to mix a black, tilting the mix slightly in favor of the burnt umber to keep the undertone feeling warm. This stage was where I realized how incredibly difficult this painting was going to be. For the paintings completed in the square foot show to date, I've been able to successfully use a limited palette of 6 colors. For this painting, I knew I had to expand my palette in order to maintain the vibrance of the colors. As such, I chose the following colors: quinacridone red, cadmium red medium, cadmium yellow medium, cinnabar green, sap green, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, burnt umber, and titanium white. As you can see, a full rainbow. There were 2 reasons that this painting was so difficult and wound up taking me almost 3 times longer than I originally anticipated to complete it. The first was the sheer amount of detail. I used almost exclusively size 0 brushes throughout this painting, with the occasional exception on the larger petals. The second reason was the colors themselves. Since these tulips are a bright red and the petals were resting up against green sections, I often had to wait for the paint to dry overnight before being able to work on the next section, or risk creating muddy colors by accidentally blending red into green. Preserving those saturated colors meant working with pure color almost straight from the tube, and the last thing I wanted to do was have them lose their vibrancy. As I was working on the tulips, I really tried to be sensitive to whether the color was warm or cool, as this impacted which color from my palette I'd select to form the base of the petal. For my cooler reds, that fell more into a magenta, so I would use the quinacridone red. For the orangey reds, I'd start with a cadmium red medium. I did the same with the 2 greens and the 2 blues. Cinnabar green is a lime green that was a perfect match for the yellowy sections of green, while the sap green leaned a little bit more towards the ultramarine blue. As for the blues themselves, I used phthalo blue to get a bright turquoise on the right side of the left tulip, but this was really the only place in the painting that I used any phthalo. If you don't have a certain color and don't feel like adding it to your palette, don't worry about rushing out, just make do with what you have. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank photographer and artist Teresa Overett for the use of the photo that provided my reference. You can find Teresa over on Instagram at @TS_Overett, and I've linked her profile in the description below. You can also find my work on Instagram too by following @Marianne Vanderdusen, again linked below. Something to be aware of when you're working with pure colors is that they are often transparent. Because I was working with a cadmium red straight out of the tube for the central flower, my first layer of red went on incredibly transparent. Part of this can be attributed to the fact that I use Winsor & Newton's liquid to accelerate the dry time, which also effectively waters down the paint's opacity. On the central tulip, I'd like to use the largest white petal as a case study for how I achieve depth without using any blacks to build highlight and shadow. This petal is definitely a focal point in the piece, and I hope that spending some extra time here may help you if you are in search of creating light and airy petals. I start by working left to right as usual, thinking about sculpting the petals with naturally occurring values within colors. For example, yellows and golds have a lighter value than purple, even in their pure state. I can use this to my advantage to create dimension by using lighter, warmer colors to show where the light is striking, and cooler colors, such as the violets, to create shadows. Using colors instead of tones of gray makes the painting seem so much more inviting and joyful. The key to success with this petal, and really most petals, is just knowing where to soften. On the edges where the petals end, I have hard edges, but on the interior of the petal, I blend, blend, blend. This can be achieved with acrylics by working in multiple layers to slowly blend up colors. In oil, you simply use 2 different brushes to apply each color, and then use a third clean, soft bristled brush to blend between the 2. In this petal alone, I used green, shades of gold, violets, reds, and pinks, and when all those colors are blended together softly, the effect is beautiful. If you're not sure what colors you're seeing in your reference photo, you can use an eyedrop tool, which you can find in Photoshop, or by adding a Chrome extension called Eyedropper to your browser. This will isolate the colors in your reference photo and allow you to see the exact color you need. I've included a link to that plugin below. The last tulip was probably my favorite, even though it remains fairly subtle in the overall composition. I loved the soft folds of the green petals on the left-hand side, and particularly liked how the smidgen of orange made it look like it was glowing. This flower predominantly used cinnabar green as the base, but I would sometimes mix a hint of cadmium red in with the green. Mixing complementary colors can sometimes be a little scary when you're first starting out in painting, but it remains one of my best methods for neutralizing an overly vibrant paint color. After all the tulips were complete, I spent another few hours tidying up other areas of the flowers and trying to find sticky spots that were tugging at my vision. A sticky spot is what I call it when your eye is pulled by an area of the painting that just doesn't feel right. Your final mission of any painting, should you choose to accept it, is to search and destroy all sticky spots so that the painting flows in harmony. As a final tip, when you're signing your name, use a piece of delicate painter's tape to keep your signature in a straight line. I add plenty of fine detail liquid to the paint color of my choice and sign using a script liner brush. I've linked the products I use in the description below. And there you have it. This set of parrot tulips actually has another name in this collection, and that is Judy Garland. Each of the 3 flowers in the Radiance Collection will be named after an old Hollywood actress, and given that I used both a rainbow of colors and that the tulips were the perfect ruby red, the star of the Wizard of Oz felt appropriate. Thank you so much for following along, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. You can follow me on any of my social media channels, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this tutorial. Keep making your life beautiful, and I'll see you in the next video.